Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Rest from Off the Cuff. Today we have a cool review for you from the brand SELTEN, which is actually German for the word rare. They were founded not too long ago, more recently, just in 2017, and they're a contemporary micro brand that really opens to different ideas, creative thinking, unique materials, and an overall fresh approach to making timepieces, while also being, very inspired by the German watchmaking industry and some of the staples which made it so popular even to this day. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this an everyday dress watch. Some key common characteristics and design, when you're looking for something that you can wear every day that does dress up pretty well, you're going to really just want that clean, classic, minimalist design aesthetic and something that is very sensibly sized. This is their Series 00 or Series 00, and this is the 00.014 or the Aventurine dial. And essentially, what this series is known for is their use of two meteorite slices to have a very cool day and night indicator. These actually go for $579 currently at the time of filming this, and that is like kind of a sale price, and they'll eventually move their way up to $699 to a full list price. But with all that said, let's go ahead, get this piece in hand and check it out. Okay, so you probably noticed the strap. So this actually does come with every watch. Comes with one of these very cool Has No Bounds brand straps. Unfortunately, at the 120 and 70 pairing would be a little bit small for my wrist. I typically am more of a 80 and 120 versus 70. So this would be just a tad short, and I'd basically be kind of on these last couple of holes here for my larger size wrist at about 7.5 inches. But I will say the quality on these is actually really nice, so I just wanted to get that out there. Really lovely hardware, has some great messaging, and yeah, nicely milled, nicely polished. So I did want to showcase that before we move into it. And you guys know I'm more of a bracelet guy, but I actually think that this particular timepiece, for certain reasons, I think will actually be very cool and quite wearable on a strap. So check this out. I just want to make sure I'm getting the lighting correctly, because this has a really outstanding Aventurine dial. And it's going to play with the light. So I don't want to give it too much light. I don't want to take away too much, because then, it kind of hurts the legibility for the video. And I say for the video because if you're out in the real world, you're not going to be reflecting your watch off of a black camera lens. You're going to be reflecting it off of the world. So you're going to be able to see all of these nice high polished finishes really contrast against this beautiful dial. So I don't want anybody, oh, well, that's an unlegible watch. Well, it's unlegible if you put it up against something that is completely blacked out and you're reflecting all the reflective surfaces back with black over black. Yeah, you're right. It won't be super legible, but I did want to get that out of the way, because sometimes the way something's presented on video can really hinder the way that somebody might perceive it in real life. I will say, in person, in the metal, this is a really, really lovely watch. Now, some of the details here: 40 millimeter diameter, which isn't I don't think is bad. I think that's actually a good size for this watch, considering the style and the layout. Although a dressy watch, I typically would like to stay kind of within that 38 millimeter range. I think 40 is appropriate just because of how much is going on with the complication and with this dial design in general. It's 13.1 inches thick though, which is a bit thick, and you can see even just by looking at the placement of the crown that there is a good amount of that height is due to essentially the complication. So you can see this day-night indicator is typically something that would be going on underneath the dial, but you can see the hand stack is it goes all the way up. So there's actually a really great level of depth, which is very cool, especially with kind of the multi-plane stepped dial that's here. But unfortunately, it does add a little bit of thickness, but I think although the thickness might not be well proportioned, it doesn't mean that they aren't well refined, because if you look at little details like the little cap over the seconds hand, over that hand stack, just, the thermally blued hand, the execution on this really nice kind of placard style, branding, and then of course the meteor discs there for a day-night indicator, and then also look at the reflectivity on kind of the machine surfaces on the stars over that midnight blue sky, which also matches the midnight blue chapter ring there. So there's just a lot to like. And again, although not a perfect watch, there's definitely, for me at least, a lot that I enjoyed about this watch, and I think it is actually really, really cool for the right person and the right wrist. Now, getting into some more of the details, you're getting a sapphire crystal, which is flat, thankfully, which so it doesn't add any more height. It does have an inner AR coating. The crown is a push-pull crown, but it is signed, as you can see there with that SELTEN logo. And then you get to the back of this beast, and you can see a really cool custom rotor there of the logo, and not just etched onto it. I mean, that's a full-on custom rotor, which is really, really beautiful and actually really well done. It shows that here we have the automatic Miyota 9132, and essentially it's, you know, a Miyota 9000 series, except it has this day-night indicator, essentially, which typically would, you know, be integrated in a different way, but I think was actually shown in a really cool way in the way that they did this disc and kind of the multi-layer and the depth to it. So there's a lot of nice things going on. But while we're on the case back, you can see it is screw in case back, which is great. And again, that rotor is actually really, really nice looking. Check that out. So from there we get on to this dial. So although there is no lume, you are getting applied indices with that nice stepped kind of, again, that midnight blue chapter ring. You're getting traditional pontiff style hands, which are basically characterized by that large circular accent. So basically that little, almost a lens there on the hours hand is that pontiff style. And then you're getting a heat blued seconds hand, which is an amazing you know, look there. It looks fantastic. Again, they didn't cheap out, and they did refine quite a bit and tighten it up, especially considering this is kind of the debut version of this watch. I believe this was a Kickstarter campaign. And then when you get into that really cool, unique day-night indicator, you're getting one kind of dark disc and one brighter disc, one for the day, one for the night. And then of course those nice brightly machined stars just have a really cool glint to them, as you can see, depending on the lighting situation. These really light up. Wow, look at that. I mean, almost to the effect of like, are these loomed? So they did a really, really nice job, again, with a lot of little details here. And those ornate details are something that, you know, somebody like you would think and kind of expect from something within the German watchmaking industry, which is a lot more no nonsense, but then really they thrive within the details versus just, you know, something overtly being in your face, which I really like that, you know, those touches done here. And I really do like this dark kind of color palette with a lot of midnight blue. Even the Aventurine is technically a very dark blue, which, you know, it makes it look like, though, just a whole galaxy of stars just clustered in a lot of fun different ways. So very cool. Looking forward to showing this within kind of the lumen low light transition. But what we'll do now is actually, before I put it on the wrist, let's talk about the bracelet. It is fully milled. You know, it is of course nicely dual finished there with the brushed and the polished center links, which not everybody's crazy about polished center links, but I think for this H link you know, setup, it actually looks really cool. And this is actually came with the watch, so it is branded, which is pretty cool. And it is nicely tapering, and it's also nice and thin and really well articulated, fully milled. You're getting screw pin connectors. You're getting an actual nicely done little butterfly push button deployant here, which does also have a signed section, which does help with the cohesive flow of this. Looks very, very nice, and wears quite nice. So speaking of wear, let's get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this actually looks really, really nice. So if I do get it a little bit closer to the camera, of course, there's going to be a good amount of lens distortion, kind of making it render a little bit larger in terms of that. So what I'd like to do is just tighten the shot up a bit here and kind of get you a more true aspect ratio to see how it does sit on the wrist. And you can see it's actually nicely centered, and that dramatic taper actually almost makes the watch visually appear a little bit bigger. So that would be a critique from me, is as much as I love a nicely tapering bracelet, this one does have a 4mm taper. I probably would have went for a 2mm taper, just so I would have had a little bit more substantial links on the underside to help balance out that little bit of extra height, as well as the visual weight there, help balance that out. And I probably would have went with slightly thicker links, although the thinness does make it quite comfortable. I think it would just help offset some of, again, the slightly, I guess you could say, top heavy wear nature of this piece, just because and I say top heavy is kind of subjective, because I mean, really, there's not a lot of weight in terms of the upper portions. It's just a lot of space. So that ends up being visual space, right? Like, it's great that you can have that depth in a profile like this, but then once you kind of get to that side profile, 13mm isn't that thick. But for this type of watch, it does feel a little bit thick, especially when you equate in, of course, the way the bracelet is and whatnot. But I think that's pretty easily remedied. You put it on a strap, not this one because it's a bit short for me, but you put it on another strap, and I think that essentially with a less of a taper on it, it'll really even out everything visually. But you can see it is very nice and really well finished and has amazing details. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece off the wrist, set it up for some low light transition, because there is no lume available on this piece. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. So as you can see, no lume. So it'd be just blacked out, but I like to work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. You can see even in actually very low dim lighting here, just the reflection, right? Now that it's not reflecting off of a black camera lens, you're seeing that all of those high polished surfaces actually do a really wonderful job, even with no lume, helping you with legibility. Check that out. And so, again, you're not always going to be out in that middle of that field. Sometimes you're going to become, ooh, look at that. Look at the little stars on the disc, not to mention the Aventurine. My goodness. So it's nice to see what these colors, finishes, and textures render like in less than optimal lighting, to even include some harsh lighting, which typically could expose some level of, oh my goodness, that dial, production defects. But you can see there that the brushing is very uniform as the light glides over it. It's just, some light oil smudging there on, just kind of making the luster not look as great on the high polished surfaces. But hey, that's life. You're going to get smudges on the polished sections of your timepieces. But this thing is really great. Actually, it makes me realize that I forgot to do one very important thing, which is show you guys why this Pontiff handset is so cool. And it's because the hand actually will align, I want to say 4 times a day, essentially, to the to that lower subdial there. So check this out. So it will align here. Boom. Very nice. So at about 520, it's going to align, and then you come back around, and about 6:35, it's going to align again. Then, of course, it comes back around, and, so maybe twice a day, maybe 4. I guess since there's an AM and a PM, technically, boom. So, yeah, it'll be 4 times a day. So I just think that's really, really cool. I dig that so much. So I did have to interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to show you that alignment, which I think is actually really, really cool. Matter of fact, guys, let's just go straight off the cuff with this. I know I'm normally doing closing thoughts, but since we've already messed up the seconds hack there, we'll go to about here. We'll wait till it comes back around, but what we'll also do is I just thought, because some of you are probably not thrilled with the proportions, I did figure, and I actually realized that I do have a suitable strap option right nearby. And since this does have quick release pins, I'm just going to go off script and pull these right off. Not that there is a script, I mean, it's off the cuff, but just away from the normal formatting. So you can see, again, this is really nice quality. I think for me though, it's just it has to do with the proportions, right? And so what I would like to do, and another nice thing to notice, which I didn't get to show you, and I don't know if many reviewers will get a chance to, two things. So you get actually two different lug holes. So whether you're putting the bracelet on, or depending on if you want to do a pass-through strap, or a or this type of strap with a straight end or maybe a curved end, you want to butt it closer to the case. Also, you do get a really cool little screw-on placard showing the production number on there. So that's kind of cool, little secret surprise. And I think this might be a little bit close. We'll try it though. This one might be a little bit close to, yeah, let's do the further down hole. It is a little bit close to put that in. And the nice thing is you can actually get a nice view of this here. This is actually an Artem sailcloth strap, which I really, really enjoy. I mean, it is nice. And this is a nice watch, and I think it is deserving of a nice pairing here. So I did want to make sure that I'm showing it. And realistically, right, is you can pair it with a different strap, but check that out. Look how much different that looks now. Slightly, again, the dramatic taper on the bracelet, although refined and comfortable, and this isn't, much less dramatic of a taper, but just because of the style, the padded nature, it just has a cool look. And then the blue really ties in with the blue nicely. Let's even get it on wrist. Hopefully it fits, because this is all, I could probably go a little bit tighter, but you can see now even on wrist, I feel like it has its own kind of look to it, a better look at that. So we'll even bring it back in, and maybe we'll just close this out really from the hip here, guys, just shooting it live on the wrist. So closing thoughts, it does wear slightly tall, guys, and may feel top heavy on smaller wrists, especially. I do have a larger wrist, so it works out for me at 7.5 inches. And then, I think with a less dramatic taper, and a slightly thicker linked bracelet, I think the balance might have been a bit better in terms of the proportions. In terms of model variants, this is also available in gray, blue, or black meteorite dials with either these pontiff style hands or lumed lance hands, and the lume is BGW9, so you'll get a little bit better legibility in dark situations. But man, this looks good, feels good too. I might end up wearing this combination. I think it just adds a little bit of fun with it still feeling quite premium. So I like that, right? When something can feel nice, but it doesn't necessarily have to be dressy, right? So this is actually, for me, a little bit more casual, but still feels quite upscale, especially considering, I mean, this is actually a super nice strap. Check my channel history for the videos on the Artem sailcloth, but they're a premium product and do, command a premium in terms of cost. In terms of comparable models for this watch, I mean, it's really so unique. It's hard for me to think of a direct comparable. So feel free to leave me some comments on some comparables you think. I can think of other watches that have Aventurine dials, but in terms of having the unique complication, the unique design aesthetic, all the fine little details, this is definitely different than your kind of very basic minimalist dress watch. This has a lot more flair to it, but in a really restrained way that I think flies a little bit underneath the radar still. So for me, guys, bottom line, there's a lot to like here. Exotic materials, high level finishes, fine details like, the end cap over the second hand stack. And then, it's still, it's not a perfect watch. I definitely would like to see it thinned out a little bit in the case, but I think just due to, the complication, that probably would have been unavoidable in terms of height. And, they did use a flat sapphire, which means that they were aware of the height and they were doing their best to really mitigate that. So for me, I think, maybe a more substantial bracelet, which you guys can do in the aftermarket. You could put a nice thick stave mesh on here and it probably would flow really well and also feel a bit more proportional. And then, yeah, I mean, just on strap in general, right? Like, the watches are meant to have a little bit more of that proportion where it's going to be a bit more top heavy, right? So it feels like it just makes more sense versus on the bracelet where it feels a little bit top heavy. I would have definitely liked to see a more substantial bracelet for a more substantial, paired to a more substantial case like this. But, those things could have helped. But, some people might not have liked it feeling more sporty. For me, I think that I would probably go with that and own that. So, I don't want to say it's extreme enough to kind of fill the slot of a wild card type of watch in your collection, but if you can appreciate all the cool little details, and maybe kind of generally collect sports watch, in terms of those orientation of pieces within your collection, I think that the Series 00 could, I think, slot in well, as kind of a pseudo dress watch, a pseudo dress piece, because it's a little bit large to be a dedicated dress watch. But it is really nice and it has great details. I mean, this is something where watch fans and not watch fans will really pay attention to once they get a look at the details within that dial. I mean, they're pretty spectacular. So really good job, SELTEN. Obviously, this is an early, version of the 00, maybe the 01. They'll work in some more refinements, but I think even as this sits right now on my wrist, it's actually very, very, very cool. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.